So, how's everything going this year for you so far?
Not too bad. We've
Yeah.
got some really good TV shows in the can, and tournament season's been about middle of the road for me. I've had a little trouble with my arm and shoulder, so I'm working through that.
Well, that's not good.
Sometimes being in the game for over 30 years kind of wears you down some.
Yeah, yeah, no
Yeah.
doubt. Well, that kind of leads me to that first question I was going to ask you. You're retiring at age 40 to fish out of dentistry. I mean, that had to have been a huge leap, to.
Yeah, it was different. I was working probably 120-hour work weeks between the dental practice and the fishing business. And Keith Kavais came to me and said, quit, IBM. And so I thought about it, and I thought, I could probably phase out of my practice, and I could always rely on it again if I needed to. So I joined forces with them. We formed our own little business, and I don't regret it. It's been a good ride so far.
Yeah, I bet. Well, early on, you guys, I mean, obviously you've done good the whole time. I mean, I followed you and Keith. Geez, I think I was probably 15 the first time I read an article with you guys.
Sure.
And, I mean, walleye's been my passion, ever since I can remember.
Right.
And, I used to eat up anything I could read about walleye, and, I just remember you guys' articles early on, so that was, not only was it good information, but it was inspiring as well.
Oh, thank you. That's kind of been our passion throughout our whole career, is to help teach, things that we learned on the tournament trail and just experimenting around on our own, teach people to be able to catch more fish. And it's really satisfying to hear people like yourself, say that. So it means that we achieved part of our goal.
Sure.
So that's a good deal. It's
Heck
a good
yeah.
thing.
So have you ever been out west doing any walleye fishing at all?
I have not fished. I've always wanted to fish the Columbia River, obviously, and then the potholes, reservoir, and stuff out there. But I've never really got out there to do it. I've given a lot of seminars out there, but the mountain range has always been the hindrance. We're pretty highly sponsored, and so to get from where we are all the way out to the west coast is a tough deal because it's so many days of travel. We've tried to line up some dealers out there and maybe fly out, but it never really panned out. So I'm kind of missing out on that. I would anticipate that we will get out there with time, and my son's very heavily involved with the TV show now also, so we'll get out there and do some things, I'm sure.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, we have, and I'll have to work on that as far as dealers. I got a couple dealers that I could talk to, get you guys hooked
Right.
up. But yeah, I mean, fishing the Columbia, that would be a great show. And then, like you said, potholes. We've been doing a lot out there in recent years. In the wintertime, we've been going out and blade baiting for them. And
Right.
just, personal bests as far as big fish goes over the last 2 years. I mean, it's just been incredible.
Yeah, and that I have quite a few friends from out there that we bump into when we do the tournaments out in the Dakotas and in Montana, and they fished potholes. Said, "Hey, you guys need to do a show there. It's just simply incredible." So that's on my bucket list, man.
Excellent. That's good to hear.
Yeah. I've got to fish just about every place else on my bucket list. So the Columbia and potholes is definitely still two that I haven't tried out yet.
Yeah, it's funny because I mean the Columbia's been known for big fish for a while, but it seems like lately, and I say lately over the course of the last 10 years, it's actually a bad day when you go down there and you don't get 3 or 4 fish over 12 pounds.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's just amazing. You see some of the weights from the tournaments on 2-day totals, and they're bringing in close to 80 pounds.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's good to see.
There's only a few places in the world, Lonnie, where you can do that. Fort Peck, Montana, once in a while. They'll have years like that, and then obviously Lake Erie and Green Bay here in Wisconsin. But there's not very many places where you can bring in, a total of fish that weigh that much.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
Yeah, I mean it's great to see because it's so nice to have that, as close. I mean, you guys have great walleye waters there, and I'm lucky enough to live pretty much smack dab in the middle of Washington, so it's only an hour drive either direction to have that for me. So
Right.
you got to enjoy that.
Oh yeah, if there's any other place in the country that I wouldn't mind living, it would be out there because you do have such good walleye fisheries. I don't think that personally I could be that far from a good walleye fishery. I just that's why I'm living in northern Wisconsin. We don't get those big 7-8 pounders up here very often, or 10 pounders or 12 pounders. But we have so many lakes. There's thousands and thousands of lakes where I'm living right now, and I can play around and do all sorts of things. The fish are smaller, but I just like catching walleyes. They're a mysterious fish, and there's a lot of ways to catch them, and there's a lot of ways that we don't even know about yet. There's been some pretty good developments in the tournament world here in the last few years, and I don't know if you could ever understand that fish in 10 men's lifetimes. Quite frankly, they're a pretty cool fish.
Yeah, that is the truth. They can make you bang your head against the wall one day and love them the next.
Oh yeah, that's the way they've always been.
Yeah.
They can live in 6 inches of water or suspend out over 200 feet of water.
Sure.
They can live on the bottom in 100 feet of water. There's just so many things these fish will do, and there's a lot of fish that never see a hook and line because they live in places where people don't even try to fish for them.
Yeah,
Cool.
And that's what's awesome about it. I mean, we got Lake Roosevelt, which is part of the Columbia, and we started kind of fishing that one a little bit more the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And we were actually jigging walleye down in 85, 90 feet of water.
Oh yeah,
That's the deepest I've ever caught a walleye. I mean, it was...
Right. I've caught a number of times. I've caught them down to 85, 90 feet, but most of the time it's out in the big reservoirs on the Missouri River system. And I actually won a tournament for the PWT out there one year where they told everybody on TV I was fishing 50, 55 feet deep, but the reality was I never got any shallower than 60 feet.
Wow.
And I caught some of my biggest fish at 80 feet. It took a long time to get them up, but so they didn't really hurt them. But that was a real special tournament because nobody had figured that out. And
sure.
the fish don't care. If the food's there, they're there. They just don't care.
Yeah, exactly. At first we thought, because we were marking a lot of fish, and we thought they were burbot.
Yeah,
No, it turned out that they were healthy fish too. I mean, anywhere between 5 to 8 pounds.
Right.
So,
if there's smelt in the system, especially, they don't have any problems going real deep. And, they're cool fish. Big northerns are like that too. I've caught big northerns real deep in the summer months.
Oh, really?
On some of the reservoirs. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. That's good information. We got a couple deep lakes up there that we got northers in. And I've never even tried. I don't think out past 40 feet for them.
Yeah, it's real common to see them down like on Lake Oahe, to see them in 50 to 70 feet. You'll mark them right on the bottom, and they're all big ones. None of them are small ones.
Wow.
So it's fun.
Yeah.
Again, it's a new discovery, and so it's kind of fun.
Sure. Well, and this is a question I posed to a lot of people. So, would you rather catch 2 10-pounders or 22 pounders?
I think it's really the mood I'm in.
Yeah.
And the technique that it takes to catch them. I honestly think if as many fish as I've caught in my life, that if it was a jig bite, I'd probably opt for the 2-pounders.
Yeah.
If it's a tournament situation, I'm going to probably swing for the fences and go after the 10-pounders. But it really depends. I've trolled so many tens of thousands of hours that it becomes quite mechanical for me. Look at the graph. Oh, there they are. Set up my lines. I know where to put them. Boom, you get a bite. And but jig fishing is never that way. You still miss fish. You still have to figure out what they want. I like fishing plastics or especially now this new shiver minnow deal, blade baits, and now the big rage out here is in the spring, some of these big fish are taking rattle baits up shallower than we ever believed they would be. And so I like casting. It's a passion of mine, and so sometimes I'll take those little fish for fun.
Sure. So you were talking about your plastics, and one of the things that I've really kind of gravitated to over the last few years is that Berkeley Gulp minnow.
Yeah, the Gulp minnow overall is probably day in, day out, the bread and butter out here too. Anywhere here, if we're trying to catch a lot of small fish, I'll use a 16th ounce jig and a 2.5 inch Gulp minnow. If the lake's got a little bigger fish, I'll go to a 3 inch Gulp minnow, 4 inch Gulp minnow, and it just depends. I kind of match the hatch, and I've had success with it just about every place I've ever fished it. It's pretty cool. Plus, they're improving the formula of Gulp all the time. Sometimes the public doesn't know that, but as they improve it, the bait just gets more deadly and more deadly. So it's a really good product to use to catch walleyes. There's many days where I catch more walleyes on Gulp minnows or Gulp crawlers than I do on real live bait.
Sure, yeah, and with your Gulp crawlers you're talking about, at least you can keep them on there for a while without having to replace it every fish you get.
Yeah, well, that's part of the deal. If you're fishing live bait and every third cast you're casting it off, or you're getting a snag and it comes off, you're wasting so much time during the time of day where you could be making extra casts. And if the bite ratio is very similar, by the end of the day, you're going to catch way more fish on Gulp than you ever did on live bait. So that's kind of, really in a lot of situations, that's why we opt for the artificials. It's because they're, just about equal with live bait, but you don't have to rebait all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you can use that same bait, as long as it doesn't get torn up too bad. But I mean, we've caught, 20, 25 fish on one of those before you actually have to replace it.
Sure.
But
we use, I don't know if you guys use Slow Death out there very much, but
oh yeah,
one of the hot deals right now is using that 4-inch crawler, Gulp crawler, and we're using it in a color called watermelon pearl. So it's kind of like a gray and a shiny pearlescent white. So when the Slow Death, actually I use the Super Death hook now because it spins it so much better. But when you use that Super Death hook and it spins, it looks like a little minnow swimming through the water. And man, they just absolutely crush that thing. It was kind of funny because Berkeley, when they built that color, they didn't think that they had very much in sales, and so they discontinued it. And their pros, just every one of us, just went crazy. What are you doing? What are you doing? This has been our secret bait. They told us, you guys better start talking about it so the public realizes how good it is, or we're going to... So they did bring it back. It's starting to show up in the stores now. It's kind of a interesting story. Here a bunch of us were keeping it secret, and it almost killed off the bait that we like so much.
Everybody running out and buying stock in that.
Oh yeah, it's a funny deal. But out of all the colors and everything, that's been one that's just been kind of a tournament guy's secret deal.
Sure, yeah, I could see that. The one that we've been using, I call it a lemon lime. I'm not exactly sure what the proper name is for it, but that one seems to be a killer. Along with that, it looks like a perch. You got the orange chartreuse with the speckles on it.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. That one's just been so hot in our lakes around here.
Right. That's a good color almost any place too. That overall is a great color.
Now, do they?
I mean, it's neat. It's fun talking with someone from clear across the country and just compare notes like this. It's a fun deal.
Yeah, well, I wish they would come out, and then maybe they do. I just haven't seen it yet, or maybe I haven't done my research. But one that was a purple and black.
Yeah, they had that for a while. I don't know if that's being made again, but that anytime you have purple in clear water at all, I don't care where you fish it. If there's walleyes, absolutely love purple. That's why you see so many purple crankbaits, and they obviously do in artificial plastics and stuff too. That's one good thing for me to carry away from this conversation, because I do help Berkeley a lot with their R&D stuff, and And if I look at overall at all the color combos that we have, we do not have enough purples in that in any of the artificials. The soft plastics or the power bait or the Gulp.
Sure.
So that's one thing I think I'm going to start pushing them a little bit harder on.
Oh, that'd be great. That would be great. Yeah. I know a ton of people out here would be buying that one.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Well, and they used to make, and they still do. I think it's more of a kind of a motor oil, but it's got that purple flake in it. It's not a minnow. It's more of a, I think they call it a goby.
Right.
But that one is really good up on Lake Roosevelt for us because when you get it in the water, down in the deeper water, it seems to mimic the crawdads.
Mm-hmm.
That color combination that they have, and man, that one's been dynamite. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah,
makes good sense.
So your favorite jigging setup, aside from the Gulp, what would it be?
Well, it's varied throughout my career. I love pitching 16th ounce jigs up shallow early in the spring, like I said, with either a 2.5, a 3-inch, or minnow, or a 4-inch crawler. I just love doing that. The nice thing when I'm using the small minnow is I get into these schools of crappies also, and so you'll catch a walleye, then you'll catch 4 crappies, then you'll catch another walleye.
Nice.
That's a fun deal. But recently, probably in the last 5 to 6 years, we're finding that a lot of the big females, especially on the Great Lakes, where everyone thought that they just went dormant for like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, we're finding out that they don't, that they go out into 30 feet of water, and you can catch them with 3/8 ounce heads by casting. In many cases, if the water's fairly clear, you can't catch them underneath the boat, but you can catch them by casting. And that's become a really fun way to catch fish. And we'll use the Berkeley 4-inch Berkeley Gulp tails and tails of that sort, or even little paddle style tails, usually around 4 inches, so which is a pretty good size offering. Not for the Columbia River, obviously, but for around here, Green Bay is a great place where this works. 6 to 10 pound fish are real common. So where in the past, we never really touched these fish before. Now we're catching them a lot, and that's right after they spawn. So that deep water jigging is becoming pretty popular. And then they go from those tails later in the summer where we start catching with these shiver minnows and stuff. And so to me, right now, there are times in the summer, I like warm weather. And so this deeper water jigging has been a lot of fun for me. So I say through my career it's changed. I always used to like the shallow stuff. I still do, obviously, but I'm getting really like this deep water jigging.
Yeah, it's a blast. I mean, that's what we're doing with those blade baits. We're usually casting up on top of the humps that are in between 20 to 25, and
right,
bringing them off those ledges out into 40 feet of water.
Yeah, that's the same thing we're doing, but early in the spring now, we're doing shoreline stuff. That doesn't seem like the sunken humps and stuff are as productive early in the year, but as the summer rolls on, then the humps, like you talk about, where you guys are blade baiting, we blade bait also, but that's where the shiver minnows shine.
Sure.
Those larger 3-inch shiver minnows. And you guys probably haven't got into that quite as strong yet, but when you learn that, you fish them like a jigging spoon. And they're a better casting bait. They're not all that great vertical, but casting on ledges like you're talking about, they are absolutely deadly.
Yeah, the last couple of years, and it came off of one of your guys' shows you did after you guys won that tournament.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I got to check this out. So I went and bought a couple, and I went up to Banks Lake Reservoir, and man, I spent probably 3 weeks just learning how to do that.
Right.
And I was talking with Keith about that as well, and the technique and how that worked, it was amazing. And I think I was using the IK Dominator. That's the purple one, right?
Right. That's like a tiger colored purple one. It's been a good bait in a lot of places we've fished.
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, I was catching fish, and I think because our slot limit here is you can only keep one over 22.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't get a fish under 22.
Yeah, it seems to be that kind of a presentation. It's a great big fish technique. And, you know, I fished up here in these small lakes in northern Wisconsin where a big fish is 22 inches. And normally, you know, the bread and butter eater fish that everyone are keeping are 14 to 16 inches. You know, they sound really small to you guys, but
No, oh no.
up here in these tiny lakes, you know, that's an average size fish. And I can't tell you how many big fish, you know, relatively big fish for the bodies of water that I catch with the shivers. It's a fun technique. It takes some time to master, though.
It does.
I mean, if you're a good jig fisherman, you have to kind of relearn how to cast this thing, because it's almost a 180 in terms of what you do with your rod compared to what you do with a jig in your hands.
Sure. Yeah. And well, what helped me too was the fact that, I mean, I've done so much blade baiting. It's very similar to it.
It is, except for you drop the blade, you drop it on a slack line instead of. I like to ride my blade down almost like a jig, but it drops fast, you know. So, yeah, that's the cool thing about walleyes right now is a lot of these deep water casting techniques are getting to be more and more popular, and as they do, companies are building better products for them. And you know, I think that we're going to see a lot of products in the blade style baits and in these glide baits in the future, and they're probably all going to be really good products.
Well, yeah, you know, and that's the cool thing about it is just to see how much of this product is coming out, like you said, that's innovated for one by the tournaments, because, you know, you guys get to use the baits, you get to test them out. I mean, you're putting them to use, but just to see how much of that stuff is coming out is, you know, for somebody like me, it's hard to keep up with it. It's like, oh man, there's something new. I got to go check it out.
You know what the funny part was? Is 10 years ago, everybody was telling me how walleye fishing was dead. There's nothing new. There's not this. Tournaments are dying off and stuff. And how ironic is it right now that with the MWT, it's probably a bigger tour than what the PWT has ever was. Plus, all the guys from the FLW, you know, in those days it was splintered. There was FLW anglers and then there was PWT anglers. We never had all the big names together. Well, now we do. And all kinds of things are happening with innovation and new techniques and things like that. So I look back and say, oh, to these writers and stuff, they were saying, oh, yeah, no, the walleye scene's dead. Tournaments up here, you know, walleye tournaments are dead. They couldn't have been more wrong. It's fun to see it come back full circle to where, you know, the heydays for walleyes and learning about walleyes are here today. It's a cool deal.
It is, and there's so much out there, and I think a lot of it has to do with the social media. But
yeah, I think you're right. Mm-hmm.
You know, because we had a lull in ours too, because we've got a circuit here that consists of 6 tournaments, and there's 3 on the river, 3 in lakes and reservoirs, and there for a while it kind of dropped off a little bit. I mean, we used to have, you know, 125 boats in tournaments,
right?
And it dropped off, but then over the course of, let's say, the last 5 years, it's starting to come back pretty heavy.
Yeah, and I think it probably, you know, as long as the economy stays halfway decent, I think it'll continue to get stronger and stronger.
Sure, yeah. And that's just it. I mean, what is available at people's fingertips as far as access to any of the news that you need or any of the stuff that you want to find out about, it's right there. I mean, you can do it when you're out in the boat.
Well, a lot of the stuff, like the AIM tournament circuit, I don't know if you know much about that here. It's a weekend tournament circuit. Some really good anglers that fish it, but it's only a one-day event, and they have 17 events. Well, it's a team format, but they allow the anglers to actually take the photos because it's a catch, record, release format. The anglers have these photos, and now, you know, Keith and I and some of the guys that work for us developed this app called the Pro Chatter app. When you post to social media, it gathers everything into Pro Chatter. Well, we've worked with this AIM circuit so that these guys are actually posting during the day, and it's almost like watching the tournament semi-live. On the day the tournaments are being held, you kind of know who's doing really good and who's not. And by the end of the day, you're looking at how did these guys catch the fish and who won, you know? The information is so immediate. And then the next few days, the AIM guys, you know, basically stream how the guys all caught their fish and stuff. I mean, if you're a learning angler, it doesn't get any better than that.
Right, yeah. I mean, before it was, you kind of had to search out what you were I mean, really had to do some homework. But now,
Right.
I mean, it's right there for everybody for the taking.
Yeah, it's cool. It is. It drives me nuts because every sponsor, expects that you do all kinds of social media now. I'd rather spend less time on my phone and more time fishing, quite frankly. But
Right.
it is what it is.
Sure. That's funny. Well, I was going to ask you about that too because, get your thoughts on that whole no coal tournament compared to what the AIM's doing as far as your. I don't know how you guys qualify it as you taking a picture and then.
Well, the way they do it is, and the way the AIM format started, the reason AIM format started is a lot of the lakes here you can't call. You have slot limits, like you have out there. Well, to have a tournament under those conditions, let's say for instance, you can only have one fish over 22 inches. Well, if you catch a 24-incher in a tournament and you keep it, and that happens to be a no-call state, that fish is in your live well. That's what you caught. And if you're fishing later in the day and you catch a 12-pounder, you have to throw it back. You can't even weigh it. And that was the frustrating part for a lot of anglers in the Midwest here, is that, you had to guess at how you were going to catch your fish. And someone, if they got lucky and caught them in the right order, they would win these events. And it might not even have a whole lot to do with skill. It was pretty much totally how you caught them. And so that was kind of a tough deal. Well, with this AIM format, when you catch a fish, you measure it. There's a very specific way that you measure it. And then you take a photo of it, and you can zoom these digital photos into seeing, the width of the hair. And you take a photo of it, and then you take a hero shot with it, and you let it go. And the one thing that we found out is that walleyes are so unique that each fish is almost like a fingerprint. You can tell the difference from photo to photo. And, first few years, I can tell you that there were guys trying to call, and, there were some instances where the AIM people had to say, hey, you cheated here.
Right.
And they'd argue with you, but you'd show them the photos and say, hey, you want us to make this public?
Yeah.
Show everybody exactly what you did. Every single time they would decline. And now there's very little, if any, stuff that's trying to get slid by. So it's really kind of cleaned up the team tournament scene. And for people to understand, there's a conversion there. The AIM format is, we all joke, you try to go catch long, skinny fish, because you get a bigger conversion. Whereas in some of the tournaments where you actually bring the fish to the scales, you can look for, just fat fish.
Right.
So it kind of makes you think in a little bit different mindset, but it's still extremely competitive. And the guys are really buying into it because you don't have to worry about the culling laws. You don't have to worry about the slot limit laws. If you catch a fish, you get to weigh your 5 best fish during the day. And the guys are really, really enjoying that format. So it's growing. I mean, that team circuit for AIM is growing just tremendously big. It's surpassed the MWC in terms of entrants. There's not another circuit right now that we know of that has more participants on a team basis for walleyes than that circuit right now.
Nice.
And it's only been doing this for a few years.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean...
Yeah. It's in any place where there's some concern where there might be fish kills or the water's too warm and stuff like that, the AIM format, that catch, record, release format, kind of gives the fish a break. You take a picture, you can clear a fish in 30 seconds. And
right.
They swim away, every single one of them. And they're all fine. They're all in good shape, and they haven't been moved, and they haven't bounced around in a live well. It's a really cool deal.
Sure. No, that's great. I mean, I kind of like the whole format, and I know it's a different area, but the way the MLF does it, where you can instantly record that weight, put the fish back in the water, and now you're just basically recording a total of weight for the day.
Yeah, and that's essentially what AIM does, but they do it through photos.
Sure.
It's almost the same type of format, only it's the way that they actually record the fish is slightly different. The MLF format's awesome. in a smaller, where they've got, a limited number of anglers, that's the way to go. It's really cool. But when you have a 120 boat field or 200 boat field, then the aim format's much easier to manage and actually administrate. So they both have their places. It's really cool. I wish in the walleye world we had an MLF format. I think it's probably going to come, someday here, but it would be fun.
Yeah, it would be. I think that would be cool to see.
Yeah, Major League Fishing for bass right now is almost as big as BASS, and we don't have that in the walleye world. And I hope that I'm still fishing when they decide to do it.
Well, me too. Hopefully it'll happen here pretty quick. With the way technology changes so quickly, I wouldn't doubt it seeing coming, in the next few years.
Oh, yeah. I mean, actually, some of us have talked with, like, Gary Klein and Boyd Duckett about doing a walleye series, so you never know. They might even do it themselves.
There you go.
Yeah.
So on your catch, release, and record, is that stuff instantly getting loaded up, or is it just something you keep and then you turn it in at the end of the day?
Well, for the majority of anglers, they record it to the card that's on their camera, and then you turn the card in at the end of the day, and along with your score sheet. The score sheet's like a golf card, and the golf card is the deal. You have to have it all recorded accurately. It's really easy to use once you use it, the first time. It's simple to use, and then they verify the fish with the chip, and so. Obviously, there is a downtime. What happens, the really kind of cool things, the guys will come in like at 3 in the afternoon, turn in all their chips. They already know kind of what they have weight-wise. And then they'll sit around waiting for the computer geek guys to, record everything and get it all sorted out. So all the anglers are still there. They don't just grab their boats and leave. They're there. They can talk to sponsors. A lot of the companies are giving, free boat rides, heck, they have refreshments there. So the guys hang around. And there's actually better crowds at a tournament like this at the end of the, getting ready for the weigh-in than there are in any of the live tournaments that I've been involved with.
Nice.
So then they bring them all out and, sort them and have the unofficial results. They do polygraph some of the top teams. And, but they announce the unofficial results right away. And, there it is. Tournament's done. So it works pretty well.
Yeah, and I could see that happening out here at some point in time because there was there was a couple tournaments we had this year where it seemed like the mortality rate, it didn't show it on the results, but it seemed like the mortality rate was kind of high.
Right.
So
and I think we all know that in a lot of those cases the delayed mortality rate's probably higher than what the tournament circuits are saying it is.
Right.
I've fished enough tournaments in my career to know that some of the stuff that the tournament directors are saying is kind of BS, to be truthful.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have that with this format.
Oh yeah, because
these fish are all healthy as all get out when you turn them back in. And there's so many big fish photos, and with social media the way it is right now, you actually get way more traction with social media than you ever did at some of the tournaments when they're held out in the middle of a reservoir where there's only 20 people that come to the weigh-in.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. So switching up a little bit, I kind of wanted to pick your brain a little bit on what your approach is to new water.
Sure. To me, I love new water. I love water that no one else has fished, especially if we're going into it with a tournament mentality, but even on the TV show where, if it's a walleye show, I feel confident we can go in a few days and figure out almost any body of water. First thing you do is obviously take a look at any of the available maps. And, there's going to be the contours of the body of water that you are looking at will dictate the potential presentations that you want to start with. I always look at how the contours lay, whether there's a lot of deep sunken humps or channels that come close to shoreline or, big, long, extensive flats that stick out and they're only like 30 feet deep and things like that. And then I look at the time of year. I know that if there's deep humps and it's the middle of summer when we're there, those are going to be players. I know that in the month of May and June, if there's a big 30-foot flat off of a deep channel edge or dropping into deep water, that there's a good chance that that 30-foot flat's going to be a player. Those fish will either be on the bottom or they'll be suspended over it. You just know those things from years of experience. And for someone who's new, you can learn a lot of that stuff just by researching, on the internet right now. You can get that type of background. What types of structure you want to look at fishing at what time of year. So the preliminary mapping is really important because it gives me a game plan for when I go on the water. And I know if there's, let's say it's the month of June, and I know there's a lot of, points that stick out into the lake with some, medium drop-offs. I'm definitely going to have slow depth in my arsenal. I'm definitely going to have jigs in my boat, and I'm definitely going to have crankbaits so I can contour crank those areas and cover water and try to find concentrations of fish. So I think that you have to really analyze your structure first. Then you have to develop a game plan of what types of techniques that you want to try. And then you have to literally go out and execute and experiment until you get bites. And, you let the bite dictate from there. I did a show a few years back on a really big lake in the UP, and it's called Lake Ogibic. I'd never fished it, and that's exactly how I approached it. We did the whole TV show on it, and I looked at it. It was early in the spring. I saw a lot of weeds and back bays, so we fished the weeds at first. We weren't real successful. We caught a few. Fished the weed edges, started going out, and then fished shorelines with crankbaits, trying to cover water. Started catching a bunch of fish. And then I went slightly deeper. I used lead core in the crankbaits and started catching some bigger fish. But I noticed the fish were out on like a 14 to 15 foot flat bottom, but they were schooled up in small areas. So then I dropped down slow depth to them, and we ended up catching 5, 6, 7 pounders.
Nice.
Now we did that in 2 days, but that was the game plan, is just look at the maps, then look at the potential good fish holding areas and throw a lot of techniques to them and learn. Every time you get a bite, it would unfold the next piece of the puzzle. And, that's fun. That's really fun. And it takes a while to get to learn how to do that. But once you get good at it, you have zero fear of going to any body of water that you've never fished before.
Right.
That's kind of the way I break down water. And, obviously when you're on the water, you pay really close attention to your electronics.
Right.
The electronics we have right now, if the fish are over 10 feet deep, they can't get away. You're going to see them.
Yeah. Yeah, that is for sure. I know. I mean, like you're talking about when you go into the new water, maybe I approach this wrong, but I do the same thing that you're talking about as far as the contour, the mapping. I use a lot of Google Earth so I can see what's going on as far as, what you can see overhead. Because essentially you got a helicopter at your computer.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
So I'll usually pick about 6 to 8 spots, and from there I break it down to where I have 4 that I really think are going to produce. And I get out there and I try to cover the water as quickly as possible, while, using the electronics.
Mm-hmm.
And then I tend to usually slow down a little bit once I see what's going on.
Right.
So I think I got the right approach, but maybe not.
Well, in many ways, what you just described is exactly what I do. I have the rods and stuff in my boat, but I might not drop a line until I have graphed those fish in those high percentage areas that I've looked at ahead of time. So you're doing pretty much exactly what I'm doing. I just also take it a step further, and I'm ready for, I look at these areas and I think, that'll be a good bottom bounce area. That'll be a good jig casting area. That'll be, so I'll make sure I have those rods and stuff set up in my boat ahead of time. So it doesn't take me any time to pull one out and throw it down there and see what happens.
Sure. Yeah. And that's what's fun about it too, is because you can try and do so many different techniques. We were, fishing the Kettle Falls area. We had a tournament up there the first time that we had fished it this year, and I'd never been up there. And we ended up catching fish, using bottom walkers and crawlers. jigging. I think we were, at one point in time, we were just slow pulling jigs along contours. We caught them on X-wraps, casting them. So it was
Sure.
like, I mean, it was fun. We didn't place real high. I think we were like 13th overall. But, for the first time out, it was a blast just being able to catch fish so many different ways.
Yeah, and on a body of water that was relatively new to you. I mean, there's a sense of accomplishment when you can do that, and that I guess that's why I like new bodies of water. That's the one thing that the professional walleye trail used to do more than the circuit that we are in now, is we would go to all these new places, and man, was that fun! That was really fun, and Kavais and I usually did pretty good,
Right.
So.
Yeah, you guys have a pretty unique relationship.
It is really weird, and in the 30 years we've been together, I think we've had 3 arguments. And normally it's my hot temper, and Keith just kind of looks at me and he goes, "Hey, calm down. Take a breath." And in like 5 minutes, it's over. It's a weird deal. We bring different strengths. Keith is a really good accountant and a numbers guy. I'm pretty good at sales and marketing. And so from the business aspect, we each bring our strengths to the table. And from a fishing standpoint, I think both of us from the very beginning decided that, maybe you couldn't be the best in the world at every technique, but if you were really good at all of them, you would have a much better chance, being competitive in the walleye tournament world than, just being a specialist.
Sure.
So we both work on our weaknesses all the time. Even now today, if I'm not comfortable with a technique, if a guy like Corey Springle or some young kid comes along and he can do something better than me and I feel it's a real weakness, I'll go out and practice that until I'm comfortable that I can do it in a competitive atmosphere. And I think that's what we did. I know that's what my son Chase does. That's how he learned, is to be, kind of multi-talented with all kinds of different techniques. That doesn't mean you won't be really super good at one. Chase is a great example. He's one of the best deep lead core trollers with crankbaits that I've ever seen. He can fish on a sheer cliff and catch fish doing that. He's so good at his boat control. Keith is a really good vertical jig fisherman. I can pitch jigs really well. I probably won more money pitching than I have with anything else. So within the versatility, you're going to always still have your strengths. I look at this, the phenom here right now is Corey Springle.
Right.
He's a young guy. He's been winning everything. One of Corey's big strengths is that he is an absolute expert at trolling spinners, nightcrawler harnesses. The kid's phenomenal at doing that, and he's getting to be unbelievably good at pitching deep fish. So it's a fun deal overall.
Well, heck yeah. Well, speaking about your son, I mean, that's got to be pretty cool to see him follow, in the footsteps as far as coming out and, being a professional walleye fisherman and being in the tour and stuff like that. I mean, that's got to be cool to see.
It really is, and he's fished with me since he was in his early teens, and in the summer months, he helped us with a lot of stuff that we were doing, but he traveled with me, so it was something that was a little weird because I thought that he might be a professional golfer. He went to San Diego Golf Academy and is one of the better golfers there. But he had trouble when he was 19 with his rotator cuff. He swung the club so hard because he's not a real big guy, and so he thought, I'm not going to end up having problems when I'm in my 20s, and I don't want to, teach golf at a local golf course. So he asked if he could fish professionally, and the deal was that I made him do all kinds of marketing and public speaking courses for night classes. For years he did that, and he learned the game. And so he's a wonderful asset to our business, to the television show. Extremely talented angler. He's better on film than what I am, and so he's been fantastic to work with.
Well, don't sell yourself short. You guys have a great show as far as the dynamic that you have between each other. And the fact that you guys don't just go out and fish and catch fish. You're explaining to everybody what you're doing, the technique you're doing, how you're doing it. And that's what makes it so interesting to watch.
It's a formula that the Lindners had years ago with in-fishermen. Ron and Al are wonderful friends of ours. And, I looked at what they were doing and what they were doing with the magazine, and I said, Keith, when we do TV, we should get real detail like that on TV. And Keith agreed. And it's been a great formula. The show's going into its 13th season this year, and it's become pretty popular. And we enjoy doing it. It's a lot of fun to do the show, and a lot of fun to hear the feedback from all the anglers that watch it.
Oh, I bet. Well, I can remember when you guys came out your first show, and I was so excited, man. And I came home and I was like, hey, check this out. They've got a new show coming out. These are my favorite guys to watch. It's like, all right. So, anyway, what would you give, and I don't want to say advice, but, somebody that's looking to get into the sport, and I know that you guys have the angler, co-angler,
mm-hmm.
but, let's say somebody out here that wants to get into it, and I've done some research as far as the way and where the tournaments are at and how difficult it is to try and get in and fish one or two events, because you're flying in, you got to get a car, you got to get out.
Right.
What would you say for somebody that wanted to do that?
Well, I think that obviously one way is to, and some of the guys from out west have done this, where they have come in, they've flown in, they've got into some tournaments. I wouldn't fool around with anything right now other than the NWT, because you don't really learn many bad habits from those pros. They're all good sticks, and so you're going to come away from those tournaments as a co-angler learning quite a bit. Now, that being said, you just said that it's difficult to do, and I understand that. Plus, expensive. I would actually fish some of your team events out there, but I would pay close attention to what those top teams are doing. And I'm not saying climb in their boat, but I am saying at the end of the tournament, make friends with these guys, ask them friendly questions with the realization that they're not going to tell you everything. But I know that when I started, and I would get my butt handed to me, that by the boat next to me, I would learn more about what I was doing wrong. And those were the tournaments that I learned the very most from. And so I think that there's a lot of people in team tournaments that don't, it can be kind of a secretive sport because a good team doesn't want to tell everybody what they're doing. On the same token, if you want to get sponsorships, you're going to have to tell everybody what you're doing.
Right.
Otherwise, you have no value to the sponsor. So you can identify the really good sticks that are open, that will share information. And I would say revel in what they share, because you can learn so much from real talented anglers. And it doesn't take long to recognize who those anglers are in any particular circuit. So, but if you ever do get the opportunity to fish the NWT, and especially in some of the places like Green Bay, where it might be a trolling bite or it might be a casting bite, I think it's worth it. I really do.
That's what I was going to ask you. What do you think, which site would be, the best one to come out to if you could only come out for one event?
Well, I'll tell you, if I would probably not go to Lake Erie, although that's where everyone wants to go because you catch so many big fish. But it's almost always an open water trolling bite. Man, heck, to be truthful, you can learn all you need to know on the internet about that. That's, get yourself a precision trolling app and watch a couple of the shows from Erie and you got it. It's not that difficult. But the lakes that really are interesting are Green Bay, because it may be an open water trolling bite, but most likely it's going to be a structure casting bite in the last few years. Or any of the Dakota reservoirs. That might be a structure trolling bite. It could be bottom bouncer fishing. It could be using blade baits and spoons on bridge abutments. It could be so many different things that could win the tournament. Or another really good body of water is Lake Winnebago in Wisconsin. There's some bodies of water, a few of them, that are really, really diverse. And if you look, they're never one the same way. And those are the ones that you can learn the absolute most from. Because one day you're going to hop in a boat where someone's trolling. next day you're going to be in the boat where someone's casting on a very specific piece of structure, and that's where you can really learn stuff.
Nice. Well, I'm hoping next year that I can at least get out for one.
Yeah.
I've been trying the last couple of years, it just hasn't quite worked out, but I'm thinking this next year is going to be the year.
Yeah, and I think that you'll have fun. But like I said, everyone wants to go to Erie. I mean, I have sponsors. I have so many people that want to be in my boat when I'm at Erie. And to me, it's the one where you will learn the least. You'll catch a lot of big fish, don't get me wrong, but it's one that you'll learn the least.
Nice. So I'm going to switch it up a little bit and go away from the fishing. I want to talk to you about hunting.
Sure.
So you're an archery hunter, correct?
Yeah. Well, actually, I love to bow hunt. I love to muzzleloader hunt, and I love to gun hunt. I just like hunting. I always have. I think I'm a better whitetail hunter than I was a walleye fisherman.
Oh, really?
But I never could figure out how I could make a bunch of money, by having a whitetail tournament. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah. So what's your setup you're using for archery?
I've got a white carbon bow, and that it's a bow that I bought when they first came out with some of their carbon matrix series, and that's kind of what I've stuck with the last few years. I don't really get serious anymore unless I have a big shooter. In the early 90s, Lonnie, I had a really good year tournament angling, and I decided I wanted my own property to deer hunt on. So I bought about 400 acres in northern Wisconsin.
Nice.
And through the years, I've added about 200 more acres. So I've got a piece of property up here where there's, I've got like 14 or 15 food plots on it and stuff. And the wolves came in and hurt the deer population quite a bit, and our fishing game overkilled the does. So the hunting right now isn't near as what it used to be. But I don't really get serious about an animal unless it's, a pretty good sized animal right now. So there are, in the last 5 or 6 years, there are some falls where I didn't bow hunt at all. And
wow.
We just worked on television show stuff. But if I get a shooter, if I get 1 or 2 shooter bucks on the property, then I'm like a rabid fool. I have to after them all the time.
Nice. Well, and see, that's for us. I grew up hunting, fishing. One of my first memories was being with my dad when I was probably, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years old, and catching these catfish that couldn't have been longer than my fingers. But it was just that was just what we did, and so and that's carried on to the family. My wife and I were really big archery shooters. We also hunt with rifle as well, but our main focus is archery, and usually it's archery elk. So we're only right now about 10 days away from being able to go hunt.
Yeah, and I envy you, because if there's anything I would have liked to hunt more than whitetails, it would have been elk.
You've got an open invitation anytime you want to come.
Yeah, it would be. I went quite a few years when you could buy over-the-counter licenses in the Charles M. Russell wildlife area in northeast Montana, and there was no vehicular traffic in there, and it was all along the Missouri River, all along Fort Peck, and so it's Missouri River breaks. They were like mini mountains, and I used to just have a blast during that. I'd go to sleep in the tent at night with bugling ringing in my ears. There would be so many big bulls, and it was fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Then they discontinued the over-the-counter stuff to a drawing, and I ended up quitting going. But it was a blast.
I bet.
I am you guys. You're in the middle of some awful fabulous elk country out there.
Yeah, it's been good to us so far, and that's what we used to feed the family. We don't go out and buy any other meat. We have deer, elk, and if we throw in the occasional chicken, we're good to go. So
yeah, but here's in the last few years, I've like I said, if I have shooter whitetails, I get pretty passionate. But in the years where I don't have a 160 class whitetail or bigger, I actually, we're in the middle of the woodcock migration, and we have unbelievably good ruffed grouse hunting. And ruffed grouse to me are probably the epitome of an upland bird. I've got 5 Vizslas, they're all pointers, and I just have a ball with these dogs. It is so much fun because you hunt in extremely heavy cover.
Sure.
The woodcock are in these slashings, popple slashings, where it's so thick if you turn the swing on a bird, your shotgun hits the trees. It's really, really fun.
Wow.
Plus, it's good exercise because you're constantly climbing over stuff and things like that. So I do that a fair amount. But we do, with the next bite, we do a lot in the fall, shooting tips and doing some of our, good muskie shows are late in the fall, and some of our big walleye shows are late in the fall. So it seems like, September, October are really busy for us, even with the show.
Sure, I bet. Well, that's what I was going to ask you, because I saw that you had those dogs, and the Vizslas are pretty cool. We actually had a friend of ours that we had to dog sit, and that's what he had, was a Vizsla.
Oh, sure. They're active.
They're
crazy sometimes.
Yeah,
they're
but
fun.
They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
So your book that you wrote, Walleye Secrets, got to ask, is there going to be an update at some point in time?
I don't know. I have had a lot of people say to Keith and I both that we should do biography and about how we've come through and all the places we fished and things like that. I don't know if we would do a book on techniques anymore. I think we would be more prone to do YouTube videos along those lines.
Right.
Because it seems like the popularity is off the hook for that kind of stuff. It's funny. We have a good YouTube channel where we stream the show is free now, a week after they show on network television, and then we do put on all of our tips too. And we had 2.5 million views of video tips and stuff last year.
Wow, that's excellent.
I mean, to me, that's just incomprehensible. How many people would be looking at those types of tips to learn how to fish? But you could never touch that many people with a book anymore.
No.
And times have just changed so much,
Yeah, but sometimes it's nice to have that hard copy in your hand.
yeah, I'm hearing you. I just, I don't know if we will or not. One of the reasons is Keith and I have surrounded ourselves by young computer guys. And, I think we have 7 or 8 guys working for us, and they're all in that high-tech world. And when we start talking about writing books and stuff, they're convincing us we need to be going to the next, social media thing.
Right.
It's a nonstop dialogue between us.
That's funny.
Thankfully, Keith and I still get to pull most of the strings in terms of what we want to do. Otherwise, we would be doing some far out, geeky sort of stuff that nobody would want to watch.
That's funny. Talking about that, because I'm going up Saturday. I'm going up to Banks Lake, and I'm going to be doing some filming, and I'm going to actually do some on shivering up there, and then also doing jig and gulp. So,
sure.
What would advice for me to get started into the whole filming aspect of it? I've done a little bit, but...
Well, I think that you can get a pretty good following if you just do stuff even on your cell phone. In some cases, those types of videos, with not even real high editing, acumen to them, are very, very well watched. And, I would say that you basically would start with a good YouTube channel and have someone who can hold the phone steady. And obviously you can't do it in a high wind because you're going to lose your voice. It won't transfer very good. But that's the easiest way to get started. I still do a number of video tips just with my phone.
Nice.
But then you can get into the GoPro sort of mode where you're putting them up on stands and as you're fishing, you can have the GoPro film for you. But ultimately, you'll want to get yourself a video camera, and you can certainly touch bases with any of the guys from the Next Bite here. It's as easy as getting a hold of Keith and I. We'll give the email to our video guys. They can help with the camera selection in terms of, what you want to accomplish, because you'll need remote mics then. And then that allows you to do some recording in the wind and things like that.
Sure.
So that's kind of the progression, but you'll have to have someone that can run the camera. The good thing is there's some really good cameras. Like we have a GH4 Panasonic right now, which is an easy camera to use, and it gives professional grade. We actually, a lot of the footage we shoot with that camera goes on our television show.
Very nice.
And you don't have to, spend too much money in getting a good camera like that will handle remote mics.
Yeah, and I did make a little bit of an investment in a camera. I bought a Canon. And, it's got that capability to get the mics, and I should have those here within the next week.
Perfect. So you're already to that point, and that's really that, and get yourself familiar with a pretty good editing system. You honestly, for good YouTube stuff, or even beginning, you're seeing, especially with YouTube, the anywhere from 2.5 minute tips all the way up to 10-minute mini tips, almost like small TV shows. They're really, really popular, and there are some guys right now they're actually doing just that, and giving great information, getting some sponsorships as a result, and things like that. You start getting into the network world where you have to buy airtime and all that stuff. That's kind of a different nut to crack. It's satisfying, but it's not really highly profitable at all, and it's a tougher thing to get involved with, because you're usually having to spend enough money that it's an awful big investment.
Sure.
But if you really get good at the smaller films, and the quality of your editing gets really good, or if you have someone help you that's really a good editor, that step is quite a bit easier. And again, that's as easy as getting a hold of us, and we try to help you there. We help a lot of people in the industry to achieve their goals. I work with a lot of anglers and helping them with their sponsorships. We've talked to a lot of television people who are just starting up, but I think, again, we're here to help people become better anglers and tell their stories. And it's always been kind of what Keith and I do, and we're not going to change. We're always going to be like that.
Well, and that's good to hear, because, sometimes it's hard to find people that are willing to put their necks out for it.
Yeah.
I've reached out and tried to, communicate with some people, and, sometimes it's hard when you don't even just get a slight response back that, no thanks. And it's good, and I respect you guys so much for the fact that, I'm not really anybody. You don't know me from Adam, and yet you guys responded to me. And just in that alone, I was already a fan, but now, I'm even that much more one. So I appreciate that.
You're in an area that there's a lot of teaching that can happen out there. You've got some fabulous fisheries. There's no reason that we're not seeing more and more coming from your area in terms of how to fish different lakes and reservoirs and stuff like that. And so I think it's a wonderful opportunity for you, and it's really easy for me to get you hooked up with some of our video guys so they can help you out if you want.
Well, and that's kind of why I started this too, was the fact that there's just not that much out there. There is for hunting.
No, there really isn't. You get to Montana and west, and there's not, and especially about walleyes. And there's some unreal world-class fisheries.
Yeah.
So it's I'm glad to see that you're reaching out. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah. Well, we're not Southwest Alaska like some people think. We're really not.
Not at all. Not at all. I fished with some guys from Washington and from Seattle that they were such good salmon fishermen that a lot of the techniques that they used, you could really catch a lot of walleyes.
Yeah.
But they didn't know it. But the quality of the angler out in your neck of the wood is just world class. There's so many good anglers. and I just don't see much coming from that area, being in the Midwest, but I sure would like to.
Yeah.
I like to see people share techniques because there's always something to learn. Always.
Well, that's something we're aiming to do. So,
yeah.
Real quick, like while I got you on the phone, any chance that you could maybe help me get hooked up with Pete Mena? Because I'd love to talk to him about tiger muskie, but I don't know how to get a hold of him.
The easiest way to get a hold of Pete, I didn't know if you knew we bought him out like a year and a half ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But the easiest way to get a hold of Pete is to go to his Facebook page, and that would be probably, and it would be his page. It would be Pete Mena, Professional Angler.
Yeah.
Or something like that, and then give him a message. His wife basically runs the page, and she'll respond.
Okay.
Well, and then ultimately Pete will. He's pretty darn good about that stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. I went on there, but I didn't see a spot where I could message him. It just showed that it was, I don't remember. I'll have to go back and look and see. But
yeah, there should be one, because that's where, you message my professional page.
Right.
That's where I saw it. I would think that there should be one.
Well, I'll give him a try and see what happens.
Yeah.
And maybe you could put a good word in with Chase. Maybe we could have him on too.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there, I know all you got to do is touch bases with Chase and shoot him a message, and he'd be happy to do this.
Perfect.
No doubt.
Gary, I'm just kind of beside myself because you were able to set out enough time, an hour and some, to sit and talk with me, and it was great. I really appreciate it.
Well, good. I hope it helped you out, and it's fun doing those things.
Excellent. Well, hopefully we can have you on again another time.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thanks,
You have
Gary.
a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Get Bit Outdoors Podcast. Check us out on Facebook at Get Bit Outdoors Podcast, Twitter at Get_Bit Outdoors, and you can get us on iTunes and Stitcher. Leave us a rating and a comment.